walked forward. We are here for the walk to Cure FM. And so those of you who have joined us before, we're excited to have you here with us. Cure FM is an acronym for Campaign for Understanding, Research, and Education of Fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia affects 2% of the population worldwide.
Well, I want to thank Jan for inviting me to come up here today. When I was asked to sponsor this legislation, this joint resolution of the Senate and the House, I was a little bit hesitant, not because of the issue, but because there are efforts well, let me put it another way. One of the best ways to treat a problem is deny that it exists, and then you don't have it. And that's what's happened, in my judgment, with fibromyalgia for many years. Is that it has defied diagnosis, and now it's starting to be accepted as a condition that can be ameliorated, maybe not cured, but at least helped. And I knew that the minute I filed my resolution to highlight this condition, that there would be some opposition, and there was. But because of the nice information that I had received from Jan and others, we were able to put this resolution together, and it answered a lot of questions that the members of the legislature had. Basically, they didn't know a lot about fibromyalgia, as many in our world do not understand. And so I wasn't sure how successful we would be, but I was amazed. This resolution passed without exception out of the Senate, over to the House, passed there without exception, so that we had a piece of legislation that passed 100% in both bodies. That doesn't happen often, but I believe that because of the nature of this issue and the way the resolution was drafted, certainly made a huge difference in its success.
It's interesting. You'd think little Logan wouldn't have very much prominence, but because of Jan and her work, we're really on the map as far as fibromyalgia. And I understand most of the people here have fibromyalgia and know how devastating that can be. When we get a new patient in our office, we kind of cringe, I have to admit. And the reason is it takes so long because they've often seen multiple providers. They haven't had validation of their diagnosis. They're not unsure whether they really have something. And often fibromyalgia is devastating to their personal and their work life. So this is a diagnosis that's big, anywhere between 2 and 4% of the US population. They say, well, the female to male ratio is about 9 to 1, so it affects primarily women. It's a tough diagnosis because there is no blood test or any specific test that can be done that will establish the diagnosis, so it's kind of a diagnosis of exclusion. That means you look for everything else that can mimic it, and not finding that, that's what you're left with. That's a very dissatisfying diagnosis, but it describes the syndrome. And fortunately, there are a lot of treatments that have emerged in the last few years. The lack of a clinical test, sometimes, well, when people go to see the doctors don't like to deal with this because it takes a lot of time. a lot of energy, and often the treatments are empiric, meaning we just have to try them and see if they work in this particular patient. They may be proven in a group to work, but in an individual patient, you really don't know. It is a diagnosis that is primarily a pain syndrome, and trigger points are at least characteristic of the disease and the diagnosis. That's been used for disability. It's been brought into question whether you have to have the classic trigger points or not, but certainly people are miserable, they hurt all over, they have difficulty functioning both at home and at work, and it also requires the symptoms have persisted for at least 3 months. You could have a viral illness that could mimic this, that could make you miserable, and that generally is temporary and resolves simultaneously. Other conditions have to be looked for. Dr. Corey Walker is our rheumatologist here in town, and he often gets referred these patients. You end up looking for things that are rheumatologic, like polymyalgia rheumatica or rheumatoid arthritis, other autoimmune diseases. There's often a component of depression, post-traumatic stress syndrome, often is a comorbidity. There are triggers, stress in people's lives. Fatigue is a big part of this syndrome. It's been proposed that there are endocrine abnormalities, like maybe your cortisol may be off, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is this is a mixed bag. I really think that multiple abnormalities present this way, and therefore when you test it and try to find treatments, you're only treating a portion of the people, and therefore it's hard to show that your treatments are statistically significant and appropriate. It's a diagnosis that is pretty well accepted in the medical community, but without a diagnosis based on a test, it's very hard to prove. A lot of doctors just don't like to deal with it. So often when people come to us, they've seen somebody, 3 or 4 different providers, and they've got the impression this is all in your head, go away, which is not the case at all, but that way the doctors don't have to deal with it and the patients are very frustrated. This is a chronic condition. It can be managed. You can live a productive, good life, but it's probably not going to go away, and that takes time too. Multiple visits, a lot of trial and error, and things like that. Well, what is fibromyalgia? I mean, we can describe what it is, but what causes it? Well, we don't know. A lot of things have been proposed, research has been done, but the bottom line is we don't know. Some of the ideas are that it may be genetic. At least there's a component. It often runs within families. I'm sorry about that. It means your kids are at risk and other family members. It may be there is a genetic predisposition and then some sort of environmental trigger that sets it off. That may be a virus, that may be stress, maybe depression, who knows, but you end up with the symptoms and then we have to deal with it. There has been a lot of research about whether this is a retrovirus or some sort of a viral illness. The problem with all these things is what's chicken and what's egg. You really don't know. Fibromyalgia, I'd be depressed if I had it. Does depression cause fibromyalgia? Does fibromyalgia cause depression? Don't know. Can't tell. We know that they're associated, but what causes what is very difficult to sort out. It occurs over time, and without knowing what causes it, we can't really follow its natural course. There was, in the 1980s, we thought maybe it was related to Epstein-Barr virus, which causes mononucleosis. But that has subsequently been debunked and not really proven. So the testing that we used to do, and we thought we could pin down the diagnosis of chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, we no longer think is valid. We talked about neurotransmitters that are abnormal within the brain, like dopamine or serotonin. But again, does that cause fibromyalgia, or is it caused by fibromyalgia? Not very clear. There may be some combination that of neurotransmitter abnormalities that cause it. It may be a disorder of altered pain perception. The brain and the nervous system is an amazing thing, and at each level of the neurons, there's processing that takes place. That processing, by the time it gets to our consciousness, it's been through 10 or 12 levels of processing. And you can kind of think of it as a walkie-talkie. You have the squelch button. These neurons that we sense pain with always have a low level of activity. In fibromyalgia, the squelch button may not be turned up. You may not filter out that pain and may perceive it as fairly severe. And that's probably a thalamic or brainstem function, and there may be some abnormalities there. This is all somewhat speculative. People with fibromyalgia often have neck problems, and there definitely is a psychiatric component. Again, chicken and egg, it's not clear what's going on. There are multiple unknowns, and if it's a mixed bag that causes this, you can see the difficulty when you try to run a study and you get 100 people together that have the clinical diagnosis. 50 may have one cause and 50 may have another cause. Your treatment may help half, but you won't see that against the background. So it's a difficult thing. Have we made progress? We really have. Well, how do we treat this? I'm not going to take many more minutes, but you need to own this disease. Your doctor becomes your coach, but you are the team. And you've got to play the game, and we have tools that can help you, but unfortunately it's yours. And it's chronic, and so you have to deal with it. If you have a positive outlook on life and look out, like, Jan's a great example, you can function at a very, very high level. There's not many people who rise to this level of national prominence as she has done. Exercise seems to always be a positive. Every study that I've ever looked at, exercise is probably at least as good as medicines in helping with this disease. That can be formal, like with physical therapy or occupational therapy, or maybe like our 5-mile walk here today. This is kind of, you have to get over the top of the hill. It's miserable to exercise at first, and people are often wiped out for a day or two. But if they can be consistent and even small amounts of exercise, they will do better in the long run. Medications, there are 3 approved by the FDA. This is where, as a group, they showed activity compared to placebo. That doesn't mean everybody responds. That means if you treat 100 people and half get the medicine and half get a blank, you'll get more people that are better in the treatment group than in the placebo group. It may not be many, but still it shows some activity. And it's medicines like Lyrica, Cymbalta, and Savella. The Cymbalta is used in diabetic neuropathy and pain syndromes, chronic pain as well. That medicine is an antidepressant that has additional activity. The Lyrica was originally developed as an anti-seizure medicine, and seizures are overactivity of the central nervous system, where an electrical signal will propagate to the brain and cause a seizure. And you can kind of imagine